Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Turin here, and welcome to another Total War Warhammer Community Cast. So again, this is a series where you, the people, submit the community games to me, and I cast them for your viewing pleasure. So let's get right into the business, guys. It's a pretty short game, but there's a very, very fun moment in this game that I hope you guys will all enjoy. And as you guys can probably suspect, it is a Greenskin player with an Orc Shaman, so you can probably all guess what that is. So again, we do have Black Iron, so thank you for submitting the replay to me, and he's playing as the Greenskins, and he's going to be facing off against the Vampire Counts. So as far as his front line goes, he has a front line of Biggins, which, aren't a bad choice. They have the anti-large, so they're going to perform very well against Crypt Horrors. Granted, they will falter somewhat against, the Graveguard and, those type of units, but still a pretty well-rounded choice. Because, again, the Vampire Counts have a very dynamic roster, and they can bring, a number of units. And against, like, Skeleton Warriors and other units like that, they're going to perform pretty well. Aside from that, he does have some Black Orcs in the back line, which I really, really like. They're going to be very, very efficient at dealing with, the Graveguard. So essentially, he has most of his bases covered here in the front line. The one change I would probably make is to put the Black Orcs in the front and then, or at least mix them in with the big ones so they can get a little bit of a charge there. Aside from that, he does have the Warlord's Boys. So these guys are Armored Sundering, and they do have stock. So I actually like this quite a bit. He actually looks, I'm not sure if he's going to leave them back here, but if you leave these guys back and like a Vampire Lord comes in and you're able to surround them with these guys and, get them poisoned, it can do some pretty good work. Granted, poison does not stack with Armor Sundering, which is a bit of an interesting interaction there, but still. Aside from that, he does have Grimgor Ironhide. So Grimgor is just an absolute thug. You can see he's coming in here, going to push some of these boys out of the way. Definitely a very, very cool unit. So the best unit here, I guess the most fun, is he does have an Orc Shaman with the Foot of GORK, and there we go. Aside from that, he does have the Hammer of GORK, which honestly is an auto-include in most builds. And you guys can see it's already done some pretty massive damage to the Sternsmen. And, if it gets them down to, almost half of its HP, if not more, it'll almost pay for itself. So aside from that, let's see. So he does have some Goblin Archers in the flank with the Duressiers, which very, very good at focusing Mortis Engines, Crypt Horrors, all sorts of units like that. And I think that's pretty much it for his army. It looks like he does have some Morgrub's Magi Marauders over here, which are the armor-piercing missile variants. I really like these guys. Honestly, I think they're one of the better regiments of renown, especially against, they're good against dwarves, very good at dealing with gyrocopters. I haven't seen them too much in the Vampire Counts matchup, but if he can effectively micro them around, it'll be pretty good at harassing the Red Duke with their armor-piercing. So for the Vampire Counts player, he does have two groups of Fellbats? No, it looks like he has a single group of Fellbats. He does have the Red Duke with the Invocation of Heck, the Raised Dead. He also does have the Vampire with the Lore of Death, so Spirit Leech. So definitely looking to be very, very aggressive. And Spirit Leech is pretty good against Grimgor and, the Orc Shaman and those type of units. So I like that pick from the Vampire Counts player. And again, you can see the Vampire Counts continuing to capitalize on the fact that the Greenskins have very few ways to deal with the magic or ethereal units. So, except Foot of GORK, guys, except Foot of GORK. Not a spoiler or anything, I promise. So, the Chill guys over here are a pretty decent pick. They do have the Vanguard deployment, but still, they're very expensive. So, if they do get compromised in any way, you're going to be losing out on a ton of your army. So, over here, he does have these Blood Knights as well, which I like them quite a bit. I honestly think Blood Knights should be an auto-include in most matchups. They're just such a good unit. They're very fast, they're very strong, they do a Frenzy, they have an anti-large bonus, you cannot complain. So aside from that, the Greenskin player does have some Graveguard mixed in with Skeleton Warriors here in the front line, and he also does have the Cairn Wraiths, which Cairn Wraiths, they do cause terror, so they're going to be really, really strong against the Biggins in the front line because, again, the Biggins aren't immune to psychology like Savage Orcs are. And I think a lot of people are going to start bringing the Savage Orc Biggins or the regular Savage Orcs instead of Biggins, or maybe a combination of both, just because they did get their physical resistance buffed, and they do have that immunity to psychology through their Frenzy. So without further ado, let's get right into the business. So over here you can see the Vampire Counts player kind of just flying over with his Fellbats and some of these the Red Duke and the Vampires just getting in position to go. But in the front line, you can see the Biggins are going to engage with some of these Skeletons here. And the Biggins are definitely designed to just punish Skeletons. You can see they're flying and just going to take a ton of damage because, again, they're lightly armored. The Biggins are essentially designed to just slay these type of units. So it's going to be a pretty good situation for Black Iron here in the front line. Granted, these Cairn Wraiths are going to be very, very effective here. But the Vampire Counts Cav is coming around the flank, and they're able to actually, it looks like, almost catch some of these Magi Marauders, but the Vampire Counts actually surround this Goblin Big Boss. So this is something that Goblin Big Bosses are so good for. You can use them as a bait unit with the Foot of GORK. And guys, it's time. It's time, guys. This is the moment of truth. So I'll try and slow-mo it, but so just take note of their health and just look at this Foot of GORK. Just look at the glory. This might be the best Foot of GORK I've ever seen. So right now, when the dust clears, we'll go ahead and take a look at their HP and just look at how hard they got massacred. That is literally like 3,000 or 4,000 resources gone in 1 second. So again, I apologize for the length of the game, but honestly, I think that was probably the best Foot of GORK I've ever seen on my channel, including my games. So I had to point that out, and man, that is devastating for the Vampire Counts because, again, that's going to trigger army losses so incredibly quick. The Red Duke did come back here, but like I mentioned earlier, the Warlord's boys were hiding. So the Red Duke, it looks like he auto-pathed on the Hammer of GORK, but he does get surrounded by the Warlord's boys who are doing a really good job just laying the smackdown here. So it looks like the Duke is going to summon some skeletons to cover his retreat. Pretty good play there, but still, the Rusty Arrows and these Goblin Missiles are doing some good crossfire as well, and even the Mangy Marauders are getting in there and giving him a little business. So, man, that overcasted Foot of GORK was just, that was something to behold. So on the front line, the Greenskins are actually doing really good, and I think largely due to the fact that the Red Duke wasn't here supporting the front line. I would have really liked to see the Red Duke maybe summon some zombies on that catapult and then just come to the front line and summon some zombies behind the Greenskin front line, which would have helped a lot with routing these big uns. But honestly, at this point, you know, with Grimgor here in the front line with the Wa, having that strong leadership presence here, it's just making all the difference. The vampire counts are just going to start suffering army losses because, you know, again, army losses, if I'm not mistaken, is kind of calculated by the circumstances around, you know, the value of the unit and what percentage of the army it makes up. So losing that much right out of the gates for the vampire counts, especially a faction who's very subject to, you know, this crumbling type mechanic, is going to be really rough. So you can see a lot of these troops here just getting cut up by these black orcs who, again, are some of the most top tier, you know, infantry units. And also they are immune to psychology, so they're not going to take any of that shit. And you can see Grimgor, he's just kind of chilling, watching his dudes do their thing. But man, that Foot of GORK, definitely pretty exciting stuff. But in the back line, it looks like the Vampire with the Lore of Death was able to get a few Spirit Leeches off. They were able to do some work against this Orc Shaman. The Vampire Counts player making a pretty good last stand here, chasing off this Orc Shaman. But, you know, at this point, it's probably too little too late. It would have been nice to see him harassed with some Spirit Leeches before going in and maybe try and snipe him out right away, because you guys can see, even in the fourth quarter, that Red Duke was able to do some serious work. But still, man, what a fun game to watch. That was a pleasure. So thank you to Black Iron for submitting this game. It was awesome. I really liked your usage of the Warlord's boys and these guys in the back line. But of course, the highlight of that game was that Foot of GORK. So, you know, there's charge porn and then there's Foot of GORK porn, and that is definitely some high quality Foot of GORK porn. So thank you for submitting that replay. Well played to Black Iron and Thanduri. It was fun stuff. I like the Vampire Counts build. You know, bringing the Lore of Death was an interesting mix-up because, again, with Elsif, or I always call him Elsif, but with the Red Duke, sometimes you have extra Winds of Magic to spare if you're very liberal with, or excuse me, conservative with your zombie summon. So pretty interesting little change there. The ethereal units, though on paper they seem good against Greenskins, I find that they don't perform well that often. I mean, still, I think bringing one isn't a bad choice. I personally don't in the matchup, but still, and I can't really comment on the Chill Geist or the Blood Knights because, again, I didn't really get to see them in action. So anyways, well played to both of these guys. Thank you guys for tuning in for the community cast, and more content coming soon.